So welcome everybody. Good evening, or good morning, or afternoon, or night, depending on where you're connecting from. This is Gabriel Fernandez Borsot, Alef Trust's Applied Program Leader. I manage the overall coordination of all Alef Trust certificate programs. I will next introduce Dr. Glenn Hartelius, but before giving specific details about him, let me start highlighting that Dr. Hartelius is a leading voice in the field of transpersonal psychology, and in my opinion, and of some others, one of the scholars and practitioners that has done more to advance the field during the last decades. Dr. Glenn Hartelius is an award-winning scholar. Last August, he received the prestigious Abraham Maslow Award from the American Psychological Association. He's also a psychology researcher and a leader in the field of transpersonal and integral psychology. Dr. Hartelius is editor-in-chief of the International Journal of Transpersonal Studies, the largest and most influential scientific journal in the field. He's co-author of the Ketamine Papers and co-editor of the Wiley-Blackwell Handbook of Transpersonal Psychology, the most comprehensive scholarly overview of the transpersonal field. His experience includes 15 years of teaching at the university level and building and leading a doctoral program in psychology. At the Alef Trust, we're very happy that Glenn has chosen us to launch his course on attention strategic skills for present, power, and inner poise in life and leadership, a course which results from his cutting-edge research in states of consciousness and embodiment. Next, Glenn will present the course, and after that, there will be time for questions from attendees. We would like this to be a quite participatory session. And so now and during the session, feel free, please, to open your webcams if you want. This way, your experience will be more similar to how the course webinars are being delivered in small groups. So, Glenn, I hand over to you.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Gabriel. So welcome. And I want to share with you a little bit of how I came to this work. And when I was in my teens and 20s, I was very much locked into my head. I was very much good with schoolwork and so on and so forth. But the thing was, I did not know that I was locked into my head. I tried to learn meditation. I tried various kinds of things, and frankly, I was a complete failure at it. And that was the beginning of this journey, which was, in some ways, it's like, if you want to teach something, it's better to struggle with learning it, because then you kind of walk the path very slowly and see all of the details along the way. And what I found, because I finally gave up on trying to learn meditation or anything like that, because every way that I tried it simply did not work for me. And what I found eventually, really just through life experience, was a different way to enter that experience and a different way to shift your states of consciousness. And this was one of the things that I found to be really one of the most profound experiences of my life. Not just a one-time experience, but really something that transformed my life from there forward. And when I tried to look in the field of psychology to go, well, who's doing this sort of thing? The only field that had really any interest in understanding states of consciousness was transpersonal psychology. It's like you go to psychology and they're very good at describing and measuring waking, sleeping, and dreaming. But really, those are the only states that get much attention. the variations in waking states are really not acknowledged, in part because they can't be measured. And uh, so I went to get my doctoral degree, and I focused in on transpersonal psychology and have been working in this area because it's like this is the one place where that kind of work can be pursued. And what I found in that process was something quite unexpected, in the sense that in our societies, in our industrialized societies, we assume that the brain is the source of consciousness. And of course, since the brain is in the head, then of course our experience is always going to be arriving at the head, and kind of our attention will be directed from the head. And what I found out was that this was not necessarily always true. That in fact, attention, so with that assumption, what we, if somebody says, well, where is your attention? All we talk about is what's the target of attention? What is it pointed at? Is it pointed at the window? Is it, is it pointed on this person over here? And what we don't attend to is the fact that attention also comes from somewhere in the body and not just in the head. That the seat of attention, that the place that our experience arises from, can be in the head, yes, but it can also be in the heart, it can be in the belly, it can be in the core of the body, and we can situate it in different ways. And that is actually the key variable. That is the way that we change states of consciousness. That is the way that we manage consciously. We can intentionally manage our consciousness. Now, people who do meditation, so on and so forth, also will shift the seat of attention, but often without awareness that that is what they are doing. I was chairing a doctoral dissertation about 10 years ago for a woman who was really, she and her family, they were all like, national champion level athletes. And she was studying the phenomenon of flow. That is, because she found in her, exercising workout, which would be like, oh yeah, I'm going to go out and run for 10 miles. See you, in a couple hours. Just remarkable levels of physical achievement. And she and, the people in that level will from time to time come into this flow experience, this peak experience where it seems like what they're doing is effortless. And so she did her dissertation on that. We used the attention strategies approach to analyze it, and we walked people through a number of different attentional strategies. And when they found the stance that was the one they used for flow, we heard just some of the informal conversation, and a couple of them were saying, now I see that I don't just have to go out there and, run and hope that I hit flow. I can actually go directly there. So it's a similar thing with using states of consciousness for various kinds of skills, whether it's for focused productivity, whether it's for meditation, whether it's for interpersonal connection, whatever it is, we can, when we learn how to manage our attentional stances, we can go directly to those skills by moving the seat of attention to the appropriate location within the body. And of course, the other thing that I want to say is that part of this process in this workshop is not simply learning the skills, but it's also working individually with removing some of the obstacles to those shifts. So this is really kind of a radically different way of approaching the management of one's own states of consciousness, in a way that is not kind of like ego-directed. It's kind of like making friends with the intellectual mind and using the intellectual mind as an ally in the process of leaving the intellectual mind. And so as I said, the processes are not only for meditation, though they certainly work very well for that. And, you know, for me, I was never a person who was going to sit down and, you know, sort of spend 30 minutes in meditation. And I knew that if I was going to use these things, I would have to figure out how to use them in a way that would allow me to incorporate them into daily life. And so this is a way to not only hone these skills, but be able to integrate them into daily life so that so that your practice, your life is your practice, and you can not only incorporate meditative skills into your life, but benefit so that the things that you need to do in your daily life are actually enhanced. It enhances your ability to connect with people. It enhances your ability to have impact. It enhances your ability to focus and be productive. All of these things as a byproduct or as a direct product of being able to manage your states of consciousness in an intentional way. You know, as far as I'm concerned, you know, it's like the Buddha found, you know, a couple of very exceptional states of consciousness. And for his purposes, they were about liberation. And, you know, what he did was he left his family, he left his village, and he went out to, in the tradition of India, to live in, you know, just live in the world as a renunciate, as a monk. And the way that meditation has been taught has largely been drawn on those traditions. And at the same time, the way that we live is rather different. So, for example, if you wanted 100 years ago, you said, oh, you know what, I want to learn mindfulness. You wouldn't go to a class in your village on, you know, Tuesday night for an hour and a half. You would leave your home. You would leave your village. You would leave your fields, your business, your family, and you would move to a community where you would be immersed in that. Well, I don't know about you, but I think for most of us, that option doesn't really work very well. And yet we are, in large part, using sort of teaching strategies that are very resonant with that sort of inductive process of living in community and just kind of absorbing it without having sort of a clear model. And to me, it seems like in order to incorporate these into the kinds of lives that we live and the kinds of pressures and demands that are on us, that we need something that is more explicit, that is more direct. So the attention strategies is a direct way to learn these skills and incorporate them into life. And so, Gabriel, I just want to check with you, perhaps, you know, just see if there's any questions that you that.
Yeah, I wanted to share also my experience, because I took 3 workshops with you, Glenn, 2 online, 1 in person. And I've also used the techniques in my psychotherapeutic practice. And I think an aha moment for me was when I realized that the same that when I do something, my physical body is in a certain posture. When I'm paying attention, my consciousness is in a certain attentional posture in a way. My awareness is in a certain attentional postures. And I was just not aware of that. And most of the people I've been using these techniques with, they're not aware of that. And it's very revealing when they discover that they have been living in their head most of their life, for example. And for some people, when they experience how it is to be in their heart, it's like, oh, this is my place, or this is the natural place for them, right? But our culture, basically, I mean, in the Western world, trains us to be in the head. Is the locus of control? Is the locus, yeah, right? And also for some people, when they discover that they could also be in the hara, in the vital center, a bit below the belly, the belly button, they feel like, oh wow, this is totally different. I've never experienced that, right?
Exactly.
And I've also used this to diagnose. I use this is a very soft and respectful way of diagnosing. If for a person it's easy to be in the head, it's easy to be in the heart, it's easy to be in the hara, what's their natural place? Some people say, oh, for me it's more natural to be in the heart, but I've always been in the head, for example, right? And also, for example, I've seen that for the people whose natural, let's say, natural center is more gravitating toward the hara, is people who feel rebellious against the educational system. They feel they don't fit in society because our society is forcing them to be in the head.
Yeah.
And that's not their natural gravitational center of consciousness. So there are a lot of layers and nuances for this approach, which were very revealing to me. And that's one of the important reasons we have invited Glenn to give this course inside the Alef Trust. And yeah, it was very useful for me for the way I was listening to my clients, right? But also as a way for me to diagnose and to use these very respectful techniques with my clients to very quickly and easily have very relevant information about the way they are in the world.
You know, and the other thing that I'd like to thank you for that, Gabriel, I'd like to add is that I also find, you know, it's like there's a certain tension, and I experienced this myself. It's like growing up kind of more intuitively oriented. I found that that scientific psychology, I felt sort of very marginalized by it. I felt like the kinds of approaches simply didn't understand the kinds of experiences that I had, didn't respect them, didn't honor them, and wasn't interested in them, the things that I was interested in. And so one of my challenges in transpersonal psychology is like, at the same time, you know, scientific method is very powerful. And it's like, if we want to have any impact, we have to speak in that language as well. And I am very pleased to say that I have found, you know, with a couple of really excellent team members in my research team, that we have been able to demonstrate these attentional stances scientifically. We've been able to, you know, bring people into these stances, measure with EEG, and verify that, in fact, when a person changes their attentional stance, they change the pattern of brain activity in a very specific and predictable way, so that the kinds of things that to me finally resonated as an authentic way to engage with these experiences, in an authentic way, in a powerful and direct way to induct myself and manage my states, was also verifiable scientifically. And so that's part of the work that I'm also engaged in, not only for the sake of, you know, sort of having impact, but also really for the sake of respect. Because for me, as a teacher and as beginning to bring this work out, I felt that I held a responsibility. That is, as if I'm going to ask people to take their time to study this, and I'm going to be teaching with this, that I have an obligation to really do the research, to have a solid background, to have personal evidence, to have evidence from people that I've worked with, but also to have scientific evidence. And so, and that is unique to attention strategies, in terms of our team is pioneering an area of research that no one has done. We have achieved a way of measuring states of consciousness waking states of consciousness and discriminating the differences between them. That is entirely new, and to me feels like really an important way to advance the study of transpersonal topics.
Glenn, I suggest you might give a brief description of how the 16 weeks course is organized. And also
Sure.
you may mention that there will be a workshop in December for those who want just to get a sample of what is this. And yeah, I think.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So, Gabriel, I think you have the date on that. I don't have that right here, but for people who want to get a sense of, what is this thing that I'm talking about? What is this? What is the experience of shifting states of consciousness? How do you do it? There will be a half-day workshop in around mid-December to be able to just get a taste of it, and so then that people can have more than just kind of hearing me talk about it, but a direct experience to see whether this is something they would like to pursue in more detail. The 16-week course there will be some recorded lectures with richly illustrated with slides, because I like to, both work with the words, but also with the imagery that helps to convey the message. And then there will be, a series of live sessions for direct one-on-one engagements and questions, and not only questions, but also some direct process work to be able to help each person to, understand what obstacles they may be encountering. And we'll be working through about 5 different major attentional stances, which in the end we're gonna put them all together into really the stance of whole person presence, so that you have a repertoire of attentional stances to practice, not only for sort of internal development, but really also for enhancing your skills for the things that you need to do in everyday life.
Okay, and I think we could start the conversation with the attendees so they can ask any question, anything they want to know, more information, or just any curiosity about this method and how it works.
Great.
So who wants to break the ice?
Hi, Julian. I'm not hearing you yet.
Oui.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you are.
Do you want to ask anything, Julian? Because we're hearing you. And hello? I'm not sure he's hearing us. So just, yeah, let's move to any other person who wants to ask anything.
Can I ask?
Yes,
Yep.
Julian, if you want to ask, just speak.
Yes, I would like to know the most attention we can use in daily life. The most one.
The most one? You mean which stance? Or do you mean which applications?
Here we have a communication.
Maybe in receiving persons.
Again, with communicating with
different persons.
Yes. So for that, one of the stances that that we've described is one to help create that experience of safe space. So I don't know, Julian, are you involved in psychotherapy or coaching or anything like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, you know, you probably have had these kinds of experiences. You know, it's like you have something on your heart and you want to speak to someone. I just need to talk to someone. You know, you text someone, you say, oh, let's meet for coffee. And you sit down with them and it's like, no, the words don't come. It's like, no, I can't do this. And maybe another time you sit down with someone not expecting to share anything at all. And suddenly it just wells up and it comes out and you're just telling them everything. The difference is not in physical posture, it's not in language, it's in quality of presence. And so this has been something that has interested me and where we have worked to describe exactly how to create that safe space, that sense that, oh, someone is really listening. I am not alone. I am with someone and it is safe. And we are sharing this space together in a very safe and connected way. And that can be cultivated through the use of attentional stance.
Okay.
People who are psychotherapists or coaches who've been doing it a long time often do this naturally. But if you ask them how they do it, typically they will not be able to tell you. So through the use of the attention strategies approach, we've been able to describe this very specifically, very precisely, so that it's not just, oh yeah, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't happen. But to be able to create this, to be able to cultivate this, to be able to invite each person that you work with into that kind of space. That's what having these tools helps you to create.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you for your question.
So who's next? Who want to ask? Anna.
Hello, Gabriel. Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for this opportunity. I studied cosmology and archetypal astrology, and I'm interested in archetype, which emerges from the interweaving of the astrological tradition with depth psychology and transpersonal spirituality. And I followed some of the work of Peter Levine, which is similar to what you do, I believe. And I'm interested to see how archetypes fit into this modality of yours, because I've looked at Peter Levine's work, and he mentioned a vital factor often overlooked in healing early trauma is utilizing archetypes as a vehicle for transformation and as a way to connect with the deep self. This is the part of us that is uninjured, is pure and whole, the innocent. This is the source from which deep healing and self-compassion emanate. He continues and how to identify the archetypal structures within themselves and apply and utilize archetypes in trauma healing in somatic way. Could you comment in any way, Glenn, of how you see this, if at all?
Sure. So, you know, one of the things about archetypal work and about imaginal work is that it really speaks the language of this part of the mind.
Yes.
This part of the mind is our rational ego discourse.
Yes.
This part of the mind speaks in that imagery. You know, it's the language of dreams, it's the language of visions, it's the language of poetry, right? And so what attention strategies does, for one thing, is really enables people to actually make a shift so that they're no longer sitting only or even mostly up here in this state of consciousness. Because if you're sitting here, you can still direct attention down towards the body, and you can use the archetypal language, and it can be helpful. But when you actually make the shift, when you actually make that journey so that your sense of self is now embedded in the domain of the imaginal, then I find that work that is oriented in that direction is much more effective. And I don't work with archetypal imagery myself, but what I do work with in the Jungian domain is what he called autonomous complexes. So the autonomous complexes are the ones that are the obstacles that are in the way of being able to adopt a particular attentional stance. And so we do some specific engagement with that as well. So those are some of the touch points that I see. And in terms of, I mean, this is not sort of, doesn't come with a big ideology. It really comes much more sort of present and experientially centered, which means it could be compatible with a wide variety of, you know, larger visions. In terms of that core aspect of self, I think, you know, I work with that quite literally in terms of being able to bring the attention into the center of the body, and be able to have the experience of a located self that really feels that is the experience of the authentic self. It's experience of, oh yes, when I have a desire that resonates with my core, with myself in this posture, then it really feels authentic and true in a very different kind of way. I don't know if that helps, or if any other questions on that.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. For instance, if I work with a client and I bring them to the awareness of how does the warrior part of me assert itself, and then by becoming aware of it's through intimidation, dominating, or causing conflict, or through leadership, being courageous, protective, and goal-oriented. So in that way, one can also bring an awareness to the person of those archetypes that awakens in you. You sort of embodied them. And that way they become aware also on an intellectual level. They can embody this archetype and access that expression in themselves, and then can make a shift in how they manage that part of their personality, shall I say, by looking at it in that sort of very authentic way and in an honest.
Yeah, and this is also a matter of where you enact a particular quality from. So it's kind of like how you organize your felt sense of self in a way that is less connected with the conventional narrative ego. So that you're actually in a state of mind, not just sort of in a trance, but actually in a functional state of mind that can actually be more directly in touch with those kinds of qualities. So that you can be, yes, you have access to the intellectual mind, but you also have kind of direct access to the imaginal mind as well at the same time.
Yeah. Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Glenn, I think it would be useful to clarify that when you have given your explanations, you have mentioned being in the head or being in the heart or being in the hara, but the techniques you are teaching is not about being in the head or in the heart or in the hara, but much more integral attentional postures,
Correct.
which
Correct.
are proven to be effective for certain circumstances and settings, like listening in therapy or doing a very focused task, which requires not being in the head or in the heart or in the hara, but
Right.
being integrally. Maybe you can explain a bit more about this.
Sure. The other thing is, I don't have any ideology about one particular state being the best state. For me, it is that different states are good for different purposes. And for me, the goal in teaching is to help people develop fluidity, flexibility, and choice. That is direct self-management to be able to choose which state. Do I want to have more of my attentional resources in the head? There are times when that's very necessary and very appropriate. However, if I am having more of my attentional resources and yet I am also inhabiting all of myself, right? I am really connected. I have activated the different kind of areas. I'm also in touch with the heart. I'm also in touch with, the hara. I'm in touch with my whole person presence. Then I can choose and activate particular areas for particular kinds of. I can be responsive to my life. I can be responsive to relationship and connection with other people. And it's about that flexibility. So, Gabriel, you were talking about some people who kind of tend to be more in the hara. They tend to be more kind of instinctual, action-oriented, and they kind of rebel against an educational system that devalues their state of consciousness, that devalues the kind of intelligence that they have. And so for me, it's not about saying, oh, those people are right and the educational system is wrong, or vice versa. It's about acknowledging that each one of these locations has a very particular value. So, for example, when I'm not a big watcher of sports, but if I occasionally do watch, professional athletes are just so impressive what they can do. And when they are in the middle of a game, they're not sitting in their heads. They're not sitting in their hearts. They're sitting in the hara, right? And in order to function at that very, very high level of athletic achievement, you have to be able to move your self-location. I'm sure some of you have seen somebody who's like very, very intellectually oriented, not very physically oriented, go out and try to play a sport. And there's just this awkwardness, right? Because they're not able to shift, because they're not able to move, because they don't have the ability to manage their states of consciousness. And other people who have really good intellect and they're able to go out and they're just be able to shift and move into a different state. So this is really about being able to have that flexibility, to be able to increase our capacities through the use of states of consciousness. And, and I want to say that this is one of the areas that transpersonal psychology really has focused on. For those of you who are connected with the transpersonal field, we did an analysis of 40 years looking at each and every article in the Journal of Transpersonal Psychology, and found that almost 90% of the papers during that period of time, without break, it was straight across, it was both the most common definitional theme, and it appeared in about 90% of the articles. So this is a topic that is essential and central to transpersonal psychology. And I think that rightly so, right? Because people who have exceptional skills very often express those exceptional skills through the adoption of states of consciousness, even if they don't recognize that is what they're doing. Why don't they recognize? For one thing, because our culture doesn't really have the language for it. I haven't done recently, but earlier in my life, I went to a number of, big music concerts by, very powerful artists. And one of the things that I really enjoyed watching was how they used states of consciousness to make the difference between a performance like, yeah, that was okay, and a performance that really draws you in, that really you come away and go, wow, that was amazing.
Mm.
States of consciousness are essential to inspiration, to transformation, to embodiment, to the kinds of experiences that are life-changing are usually not something that we sit and go, well, okay, let me think about the pluses and let me think about the minuses. Okay, we'll come to a decision. That's not how we live our lives. That's not how we make our big choices. That's not the things that change us. The things that change us are integrally connected to states of consciousness. And so when we can learn to manage our states of consciousness, we can have all kinds of other processes that can be effective. But when we bring it together with the ability to shift the states of consciousness into those transformative states, it just brings a different level of impact to everything we do.
Okay. If anybody has any other question, Alec, please.
Yeah, you mentioned the states of consciousness and what you discover more of them than kind of normal Western culture, but you mentioned also Buddhism, which have like jhana states, and it will be 10 of them, and this is only part of it. It will be inquiry and then another states and another states. How you see this different? How you will segregate these different states, or yeah?
Sure. So as I was saying before, it's like if you want to learn these through a traditional path, that's wonderful. I mean, my greatest respect for that. And the way that it is taught in a traditional path is that you need to join a particular community and you need to spend years immersed in that community and working with a teacher who will slowly unpack these things for you. And if you have dedicated your life to a spiritual path, then, that's wonderful. Then that's a really, that can be an excellent life choice. What we have done is we are trying to straddle both worlds. So the Buddha did not live as a householder. He left his wife, he left his children, he left his community, he left his businesses, his family, and he went to study these things. And people who do a traditional path, so it's like a man I count as a friend is a geshe, which is like a PhD in Tibetan Buddhism, and he is a remarkable man and wonderful teacher, and I have great respect. And for him, that is his life, right? That is what he does every day. For those of us who also have a life in the world, we have family, we have work, we have friends, we have social obligations. We do not have access to this. We can't spend these years in hours of practice and study day after day. So to be able to take some of these strategies, some of these skills, and to be able to incorporate them in our daily lives, so we not only have the personal development, the development of our inner resources, but it also actually can serve our what our responsibilities are in life. To me, that is that is a way to integrate some of this into the lives that we live in industrialized societies. The spiritual path is, for people who want to do that, that's very good. And what we have done, what I want to do, is to be able to make some of this available to those of us who are living in, industrialized cultures, so that we can both have the benefit for our inner lives, as well as having these for enhancing the way, the responsibilities and the relationships that we have.
Yeah, but I was more interested in your definitions about the different states, what they are, what we will learn, which state could we achieve after this course.
Sure. So one of the things that we have done, we just published a paper this year on it, is we looked, so like I said, we studied 11 different attentional stances. And of course, we're not approaching it from the position of a tradition, but what we did is we looked at traditional descriptions. So two of the major stances, two of the major states that are used, that are key to mindfulness, one of them is Vipassana, and one of them is Shamatha. And what we did is we looked at the traditional descriptions, and that we found that there were only two of the stances that we measured that fit precisely with the traditional descriptions. And so we put forward kind of a coming from an empirical point of view, is there a way that we can identify those states? And so we have identified, like I say, and this is both from my engagement with people who practice in tradition and from our empirical work, the confluence of the evidence to say, well, here is a very direct way to achieve a state of Vipassana and a state of Shamatha, and here's a way to bring them together into a Shamatha, a Vipassana Shamatha state, which when those two come together, they create kind of a whole person presence. So I hope that's helpful. If you have any other questions, happy to hear that. Thank you.
Any other person? Anything you want to ask? Barbara.
Hey, hi. Hi, Glenn. I'm just wondering, is there any small practical takeaway from this evening that would help us maybe sort of integrate this and be excited about joining you for the course?
When you say what exactly are you thinking of?
An exercise. You could tell us something simple. Do this and see what happens, or something practical to take away.
Yeah, that's actually the purpose of the half-day workshop.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. Yeah. Okay,
because
yeah.
Well, and here's the reason, and that is that the instructions are quite detailed, and it's one of the things that's very important to me is that people not just hear the instructions and imagine that they are doing them, because one of the things that I did for many years, and I've seen other people do, is like take it in and without actually changing state, do something that seems like, oh, this must be it, but the change is not there. So for me, it's very important when providing these exercises to really be working with people, be observing directly, and being able to make sure that the way that it's being heard and translated into internal action, into internal gesture, is actually making that transformation.
Yeah. Okay. So that's brilliant then. I have to, yeah, because I find it quite easy to say things, but
right.
to embody them is a very different perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And welcome to the Western world.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
So we get taught at school.
exactly. And here's the thing, Barbara, and that is, I feel like, first of all, I want to say that the education that we get in these Western systems is the piece that helps us to come into the head, that helps us to develop these discernments and intellectual capacities is very valuable. It's an important piece. And it is only one piece.
Mm.
And what people in indigenous cultures have is they have the whole person present.
Yeah.
So we have this, which is a gift, which is powerful. And when we only occupy this gift, when we stop at this gift, there is so much that we give up.
Yeah.
There is
100%.
so much that we forego, and there are such ways in which the intellectual development can be enriched by the whole person development.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is our next step. It's like we have done a fantastic job, if you will, of teaching people collectively, like in large numbers, to come up into the head and to develop these rational capacities. Wonderful. I mean, it is a step that I have to admire, just in terms of the movement of the great numbers of humanity. That's an achievement. And yet we now are seeing, through all kinds of social problems, ecological problems, the limitations when we don't have empathy, right? When we don't have our hearts, when we're not connected with our souls, we act in ways that are self-destructive. And so to me, the next development is indeed, okay, great, we need this. Let's use this, and let's use it to bring us also into harmony with the heart, with the hara, with the soul, with the body. Because, so it's like Jung's notion of raising the inferior function. Like you have thinking and you have feeling. Well, we've done really good with the thinking part.
Yeah.
But with the feeling part, it's not just, oh, I have a feeling, oh, I'm having an emotion. It's really about sense perception. It's about body perception, right? And so we've done really good on this one, and the other one, not so good, right? As a matter of fact, pretty poorly. But Jung's notion was you raise the inferior function so that both functions work together. And when they work together synergistically, they create something entirely new, which of course he called the transcendent function. And so for me, learning to use these attentional stances is not just about the skills, not just about the meditation, but it's also about raising the inferior function, and something that we as a culture desperately need, so that we can come to a different way of collective functioning.
Yeah.
Oh, it seems we've lost Barbara. Yeah, okay.
Oh, you froze for just a second.
Oh,
okay,
sorry. No, I was just saying it's very exciting. Yeah, and 100%. It's something that will help humanity a lot.
Yeah. Thank you for your question.
We're reaching the hour, and just to finish, I have checked the calendar, and the workshop is being offered on Sunday, December the 10th, from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. UK time, right? So depending on your time zone, it will translate differently. And there's an interesting offer, which is the workshop costs 200 British pounds. But if you then decide to register for the 16-week course, you will reuse these 200 pounds in full. So the 16 weeks course costs 1,000 British pounds. And if you take the workshop, then it will cost only 800, right? So this is just an incentive for you to try and experience the workshop. And in case you want then to register for the 16 weeks course, then it's not costing additional money indeed. So we're going to close the session, and you will receive in a few days an email with the recording and also information about this and how to register for the workshop in case you want to register, etc. So we hope you've had a good time. We've had a good time, certainly. And if you want more information, just keep in touch with us. Right.
Thank you so much for your questions and for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Good night. Good evening.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. Bye bye, Ana Maria.
Ciao.